Welcome to 4.0 to Pro, the pickleball podcast that focuses on a single shot, tip, or strategy to improve your pickleball game with every single pocket-sized episode. Our goal is to make you better on the court every time you hear our voices.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 4.0 to Pro, your pocket-sized pickleball podcast where we teach you a single shot or strategy every single episode. I'm Michael O'Neill here in sunny Long Beach, California, joined by Mar there in, I almost said Boca Raton, Aspen, Colorado. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It's really nice out here and I'm enjoying the wildlife. Actually just saw a deer on the way home right by my sidewalk. And about half an hour ago, I saw a good-sized black bear just walk by the window. So it's been quite an interesting afternoon, I have to say. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. We have a very busy week of pickleball coming up here in Southern California. Got the APP tour coming to town, so you'll be popping here to continue your reign of domination in APP. Hopefully we'll see each other in the finals. And I'm also playing the Humana Cup, which will be really fun on Lee Whitwell's team. But yeah, it'll be fun. I did it in New York when I was there last year and I had a lot of fun with it. APP is so cool for the senior pro folks. They really treat really everybody really well. And I really feel like the tournaments are run amazingly well. So if you guys ever have an APP tournament near you, you should definitely sign up for it and try it because it's a really fun experience.
I definitely agree. They really focus on the user experience, both for the amateurs and the pros, and especially the senior pros.
So I have a bit of I want to say curveball, but I like to do this to you every once in a while. You have no idea what the show's about. It's almost like this is an episode of Smartless right now.
None.
Very often, these show ideas, especially the ones that I have, are inspired by real life events. And I had occasion recently to start playing with a potential new partner that we would play multiple tournaments together. And we got on court and he's a fabulous player, really good. And as you go through the getting to know each other on the court process, there are things that emerge. Maybe they're a little better on the right side, or maybe they're a little better on the left side, or you move together in this certain way, or you have to have some conversations about X, Y, and Z, where they're returning, or blah, blah, blah. Just strategically how it goes. And if you're really looking for a long-term partner, these are things that really have to be sorted out. Not only that, but there's such a clear advantage when you've been playing with Jose Derisi, I don't know how many tournaments now, but you've got at least 100, if not hundreds of games under your belt, correct?
Yeah, I haven't tallied it up, but yes, a sizable number that we have played together, and it definitely helps a great deal knowing what your partner is going to do or how they react in certain situations. So it's incredibly helpful, yes.
So if you could, let's say it's the percentage of times when a point ends that you and your partner discuss strategy, maybe it's more in game one and then you settle in, but let's assume it's game one and you're with a new set of opponents that you've never played together. How often are you talking strategy as you're both walking back to the line?
It's really a significant portion of the time that I like to have little snippets of what we're going to do, or if something worked or if something didn't. I would say the majority of the time that's the case. So I would probably say 60 to 70% of the time.
I think that's true as well. If we look at the timeline between, let's say, 4.0 and 5.0, okay? When you're closer to the 4.0 world, you're working on shots mostly. You're working on being able to execute the shots that you'd like to. And then once you get those shots down pretty well, then somewhere around that 4 or 5 area, you're starting to figure out like when and where to deploy those shots and what the strategy might be around it. But after that 4.5, I think that strategic thinking is a monumental portion of what is the difference between winning and losing. Because you can have, at some point, all 4 players on the court have all the shots. They've drilled a ton. They're pretty consistent. The big difference between our team and your team is how we strategically take advantage of your weaknesses or our strengths. Does that sound accurate-ish?
Absolutely. And it's not just taking advantage of our strengths and minimizing our weaknesses, but it's recognizing those on the other side. And I think that might be an even bigger component of successful strategy.
I agree. And where I was going with this initial partner was there's a distinct difference of how you think about rec games where you just go out to your local park, and then how you think about tournament games at that higher level when you have to think really strategically. And where we had a bit of a disconnect was he was so flowy and into the rec game mode, even as we were starting to play together, that it was hard to switch him into, this is great. And that was an amazing athletic play that just happened. But they're going to identify XYZ when we get into the tournament, and we have to have a strategy around that. The thing that just happened that was amazing might work once. It probably won't. But if it does, they're going to see it and they're going to fix it quickly, because that's what happens at that level. They identify what's hurting them and they strategize around it. And I feel like you and I have had this conversation 50 times so far on this podcast.
Yeah, we have had something similar, and it sounds so mundane and so obvious. Look at what's hurting you and don't give them that. Look at where the safe and weak spots are and hit those. But oftentimes you're in the heat of battle and those things go unrecognized. I just had a video conference with some people on my NPL team, and we watched a match that they played this past event, which was in South Florida. And there was one particular thing that worked incredibly well, and they won 90% of the points when they did it. And there was one thing that did not work very well, and they lost the majority of the points where they hit the ball to this particular spot. And only after we watched the match, and it was so obvious watching it retrospectively. I did not watch the match because I was playing, or I was coaching someone else, and I don't recall the reason, but I did not watch the match live. But looking back on it, it's amazing what a difference it made. The players on my team lost that match and lost two really close games, 11-9. And if they had just adjusted their strategy correctly, they would have won. And it would have been relatively easy. It would have been like 11-6, 11-5 at the tightest. If when you're in the heat of battle, it's tough. But I will say this, and this is something that I preach a lot to my team. There are times you play rec to work on things, to have fun, to goof off, to try Berts and Ernies and ATPs and behind the back and tweeners and whatnot. Of course, we want pickleball to be fun. But if you're preparing for a tournament with a partner or just on your own, and you don't have some intentional rec games where you're trying to hit the right shots, you are not going to magically do it in the match, in the tournament. You cannot turn it on, and you have to recognize that. I can't tell you how many times last year we were playing rec games, and someone would say, oh, I'm not going to do that in the match. And guess what happens in the match? They do that exact thing, which didn't work in rec.
Right.
And they make the poor decision, because decision making is a skill. And unless you practice that with intention as you're preparing for a tournament, you're not going to do it in a tournament style setting or a competition setting.
So that's really where I'm going with this, is that our disconnect as a new partnership. I knew all this. I knew that we had to work very specifically, not only on strategic thinking between every points, like just literally getting reps in to say, hey, let's try to target X or whatever the thing is, whatever the game is giving us, but also some of the mechanics of unwinding a stack or something like that, which we had never done together or made any signals or anything like that. And he wasn't a fan of stacking. And he was like, I need a good reason why people stack. And I'm like, it's just to exploit weakness, or if we have a strength that we can go up against, it's why we would do that. Just like anything. But where I think we got burned, and I think this is where I want to start this, Mircea, is that I want to start here and then I want to work our way back down from, let's say, 4-5 to 3-5, because we know we have a lot of 3-5 type listeners listen to the show. I would say that, like, I play with a group pretty regularly at Los Cab, where you've been. A lot of 4-5 dudes in that group that any given moment could take over a game and get hot, and their shots would be amazing and they could win the game for their team. What is stopping them from going up to that next level is that they don't generally think strategically yet. That is a muscle that they've not yet worked out. And I think once people realize, oh, wait, once I get pretty cozy with most shots, I have to start thinking like chess versus checkers, which is really where your main strengths are.
Yeah, and I would challenge that assertion that it's not just that they're not thinking strategically. They're not thinking strategically and not communicating with their partners. And I think this is the big revelation that I've had, is that I can play strategically and I can play a perfect game. If I don't communicate what I'm doing and what my thinking is to my partner, I will not be successful. Now, we might win a game, we might win a match here or there, but I cannot go where I want to go without someone else on the court. And we have to do that together. They have to understand what I'm doing and vice versa. And if it doesn't make sense, it's hard to be successful. Like, I can tell you, hey, listen, hit it to this guy's backhand, and someone has a weak backhand, and okay, that makes sense. But if I'm telling you things that you don't understand, that doesn't make sense to you, and you just, okay, I'll just do it, like, you just don't do it properly. So I feel that you need some sort of understanding between the two of you, not just what the strategy is, but why the strategy is what it is. And that will help you not for today, not for tomorrow, but also down the road, and it will help you be a successful partnership. And what's interesting about what you're bringing up is that you're absolutely correct. That what I've seen at the lower levels, and particularly I'm out here coaching a bunch of different levels, and at the 3-0 level, everyone's just hitting balls. There's no communication with their partner at all. And it really helps to have the knowledge of where your partner is hitting the ball. Just anticipation. So it doesn't necessarily need to be high-end strategy. Not like dink to their left foot, then to their right foot, then lob, then, whatever. It can just be like, hey, let's hit the ball to the person that is moving, that is returning the ball. Let's hit our thirds to that person. As simple as that.
That's a perfect segue, because I was going to say, why don't we give a couple of strategic tips for those levels, a 3-0, a 3-5, a 4-0, a 4-5 kind of thing. And I think that's a perfect start, which is, hit the third to the person you just served to, whatever that is. They're going to be coming up. My suggestion was going to be for that pre-serve alignment. If you don't like your backhand third, let's just have everybody line up to the left side of the service box. The left side player lines up just near the left side line. The right side player lines up right at the tee. And if that right side player serves, the ball comes back. If it's kind of left foot or behind, then the left side player gets it. If it's in front of them or to the right, then they get it. That's one way to have control over your environment with pure strategy. If you don't like your backhand third, don't ever hit one. Align yourself so you don't have to do it.
It's funny you bring that up, because I can't tell you how many times I've said that since I've been here in Aspen coaching. And it came up several times again today. And that's an excellent point that you and I have discussed numerous times. And it seems like it's so simple and obvious, but the times that I've seen people adjust and actually think of that on their own so far has been zero. No one's thought of it. They'll say, oh, that's a great idea. I never thought of it that way. Or they just won't do it. It's even after I discuss it, sometimes it's hard to implement, because again, it's something that you need to train yourself to do repeatedly. And I'd have to remind someone, hey, someone doesn't want a backhand, so let's try doing the pre-serve alignment again. But even something as simple as calling the ball in the middle, who is going to take the third? Not to mention like discussing it beforehand when you first step out on the court with a new partner. Hey, I'm going to take the thirds that are coming from here. My forehand's a little better, my backhand's a little better, I like this, whatever. But just calling them in the middle, a lot of people just don't do that. And it just improves the gameplay so much. We love having fun, and we love winning, and we love having good games. And it's a lot more fun to have good points and good games. It's not as much fun to go out there and play rec games and beat someone 11-0, 11-1 when the points are less than 4 to 5 shots total. It's a lot more fun when there's more points. And when I'm out here coaching, that's one of my primary goals is to have the points last longer. And the people that implement the strategies, you notice that the points are getting better and better. And at the end of an hour play lesson, it's incredible that you'll see 10 to 20 shot rallies where the first 10, 15 minutes were 5-shot rallies.
Yeah, for sure. It's always funny as well when you say the thing where, let's line up to the left of the box, and they literally, inevitably say, my backhand third is just as good as my forehand. No, it's not. Never is. Let's say at the 3-5 level, and I'm curious about this too, because there's a bit of a tenuous line, especially early on at this 3-0, 3-5. Very often, it's not strategic. People are just hitting the wrong shots. They're trying to hit a full drive from the middle of the transition zone. It's hitting the fence or it's hitting the net. Even if you have good communication with your partner, is there a way to ease into it where you say, hey, maybe instead of that drive, why don't we try dropping in the middle for a couple of points and see if that does anything for us? See if we can make some hay from that. Versus, so like more strategic thinking versus don't hit that shot or I don't like the shot you hit. Because that's the part I think that can cause some issues on the court.
Oh, absolutely. And I've done it myself. Hey, that's not the shot. And a lot of times guys can say, hey, that's not the shot. And we can laugh at each other. It doesn't go over as well in mixed, I've found. But
well, at the level, you know what, though? The higher you go, the more you realize when I hit a shot, I'll be the first one that goes, that's not a shot, dude. That wasn't it. What am I doing? That's not the shot I was supposed to hit.
Exactly.
Like we know when we blow it, typically. Yep. We don't need to be told that was a terrible idea.
That was a horrible lob that I just hit. And I'm sorry you got crushed.
Yes. So how about on the 3-5 level?
There's certain subtle things that come up, and the more subtle things are more important for the advanced levels. But the basics are often effective across all levels. And again, we've said this a million times, but driving or dropping to the person that's returning, where you have the room and you have the consistency, and it's usually an easier shot. That's like the number 1, 2, and 3 thing that I recommend for all levels. That's one thing. And the other thing is the return. Start off hitting the returns in the middle of the court and see what happens. Those are just basic strategies that typically work well if you do them consistently. And it improves your consistency, which is really what you need to get to the next level and to start winning more games and matches.
So for 3.5, because I really want people to be able to just literally listen to the show and take the one thing to the court, or maybe 3 things if they can remember all 3, and go implement them. So this one is, you guys are on return of serve. The other team is serving to you. Whoever the person is that's up front at the net, the moment that your partner returns the ball, your partner hits the serve and is returning it to their end, I would like that person who's up front to shift to the middle and cover the middle until your partner gets there. And then you can sort out where you guys need to be left and right and that kind of thing. But there are so many wide open spaces in the middle of the court at that 3-5 level that as soon as the other team, the serving team, gets that ball back for their third, they just rip it right down the middle and no one's home. So I'd like somebody to be standing there.
To reiterate, your job as the non-returner, your partner's returning, your job is to do 2 things. 1 is to help your partner get up by doing exactly what you just said. And number 2, to put pressure on your opponents. And you can often do both by shifting over to the middle after your partner has returned. And it helps if your partner returns either straight ahead or to the middle. So if I'm on the left and you're returning on the right, and you help me by returning straight or returning in the middle, I can help you by shifting over to the middle and trying to take that ball. And it's interesting, a lot of people still just don't recognize that middle line is only there for the serve. So after someone serves, that middle line is not a barrier. You can cross it and you can sit in the middle and you will get a ton of balls and help your partner.
Yeah, I'll say to those people that are in that range, I'll be like, hey, don't be afraid to hang a foot over that line. Like, you can straddle that thing, and it'll be a lot better for me as I'm trying to come up. At the 4-0 level, Mircea, again, something I see all the time is lefties not stacking. And then the other team also not taking advantage of an unstacked lefty. We actually just went over this in our lefty episode, but it's really worth noting. If you're you're at the 4-0 level, you're playing with a lefty, 100% of the time you should be stacking on serve, no matter what.
Yes.
And then when you're odd and you have to unwind your stack, there's no better time to practice it than when you're in rec play. Get used to the mechanics of making the hand signals and changing your mind, because I'll tell you what, at the higher levels, those fake poaches, man, do they come in handy. They are something that you can deploy, really disrupt the other team when they're really used to seeing you unwind the stack and all of a sudden you don't, but it looks like you're going to, and they drive it a certain way and you can put it right away. You really keep them on their toes and thinking about it. But that all has to start at that 4-0 level. You've got to start getting reps in the stacking and unstacking. And again, as the other team, if you see a team that's unstacked, every ball goes to the middle. We keep saying it, just middle. You will win point after point like a cash register.
Yep. And then communicating with your partner, I was telling you during the lefty episode that we discussed, if the lefty and righty are unstacked, I will say middle right before the point. Then I'll often say during the point if the ball is not going middle. But it's both the fake and the regular approaches. And I'd say at the 4-0 and 4-5 level, if you have two righties, and every once in a while you're switching, you're going to get some points, especially in a turn and competition environment, if you are moving in some fashion. The off-ball movement, let's say you haven't unstacked, you're not switching at all. You're just playing straight up. Yet you are up at the kitchen line and your partner's returning and they return and you briefly move over to your right and then shift back over to the left. Like that movement will often cause some indecision for your opponents and get you an error or a pop-up, and you can win 2 to 3 points a game with that alone. And as people are getting better, the games are getting closer, even the first, second rounds, and you will get some traction with off-ball movement.
I was going to say, especially if they're a team that drives a lot. If you can step into that space and they're used to driving every third and dropping every fifth, and all of a sudden you've stepped into that space, they were about to hit it and then stepped away, that can absolutely cause an error, for sure. It's a great idea.
Even if you're not switching, if someone drops to your right and you're on the left side and you're scooching into the middle, you can take that and put pressure on them and win several points that way.
So I had a situation the other day, Mircea. I was playing with a guy, rec play, a random foursome that jumped on the court. Really fun games, by the way. Really fun games, really fun players. This one guy had been playing lefty all day. And it came out after game 3 that he's not really a lefty. He's had an injury to his right wrist and had just been playing lefty for the last 5 months. And I kept wondering, why is this guy's backhand so good? It's because it was mostly his forehand that he was hitting. And we had this discussion about it. And he said, yeah, they can't really figure out what's wrong. My wrist is very weak and I'm having a really hard time strengthening it. And I said, do you know about the Yobo activation ball? And he said, I don't know a thing about it. I said, well, aren't you in for a treat? And I went into my bag and I pulled out the activation ball and I wound it up. And for those of you who don't know what this thing is, it's a clear plastic ball. Think of it like this. Remember when you were in science class and someone spun a bicycle wheel and then you could put it on your fingertip and it would just rock back and forth. And if they stuck you on a chair, you could spin yourself left and right based on how you tilted this wheel. Same exact concept, but in a small plastic ball that's maybe a little bit smaller than a tennis ball, like a racquetball size. And you get the internal weight of this thing moving really quickly. And then you have to manipulate it almost like, you can think of it like a hula hoop. If you feel the pull and then you get your muscles around it and this thing's spinning in your hand, man, it gives your hand and your wrist and your forearm a huge workout. This is something you can literally do in your car on the way to the courts. So I showed the guy how to use it and he was totally blown away by it. He said, oh my God, this is great. I said, well, you keep that one. That is yours. So Yobo, you owe me an activation ball, but you have a new customer.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a gyroscopic ball. So that's the motion. And it's a great warm-up for your wrist and forearm on the way to the courts. And it really can keep you loose a little bit between games. And it's a great addition to your warm-up armamentarium.
There's that word again.
I knew you'd like that.
402p.com/warmup. 402p.com/warmup. Get your Yobo Backpack Plus, which will contain that activation ball. And it's really good, you guys. We've been talking about it for the last couple months. And if you don't own a Backpack Plus yet, get yours today. 402p.com/warmup. Finally, Mircea, we're at this 4-5 level. I suppose we could talk about the 5-0s too. We don't give them enough love on the show. 4-5, you now... To me, this is where the rubber meets the road. Not only have you done everything that we've already talked about on today's show, they should be like a regular part of your games. You should be regularly communicating with the people that you play with. If you do have a doubles partner that could be a potential tournament partner, then you've got to start taking things to the next level. If everyone could listen to this podcast, it would be a lot easier on the rec courts to all start communicating and thinking strategically. Barring that, it's nice to be able to introduce patterns where you're going to tell your partner, all right, I'm going to go outside 2, I'm going to go inside 1, look for that pop-up on that third one, I'm going to aim for this. Those are the kind of conversations you can have. And as you become more well-versed in strategic thinking and just seeing the game from the outside, especially that what is hurting us, can we please stay away from that? Then the game will ascend, and you will find that just based on positioning and strategy, you can win a lot of games that you were losing before, even with the exact same shot, skill set.
So, Michael, I would say that for me, one of the most important things to concentrate on in terms of successful strategy in the 4-5-5-0 range is really to just make balls. And I know that sounds simple and, again, mundane, yet what often happens is we try to hit perfect shots. We try to make that perfect third, and we hit it in the net. And then we have a side out where one person hits in the net, the next person hits a drive deep. They have good drives and they have good drops, but they try to be perfect. They try to win the point on the first couple balls. And the reason that is that it's enticing because you feel confident. You feel like the ball goes where you want it to go, and you feel that you can be perfect. But it's a small court with a hard ball and a hard paddle, and the more consistent you are, the more you're going to win matches. And oftentimes the difference is not so much the incredible amount of skill disparity between one side and the other. It's that one side makes more consistent shots. And when you make your thirds, you make your fifths, when you make your returns, when you make your serves, particularly the critical points, 8-all, 9-all, and when we go back a little bit to the rec games that we're talking about, you can have all the fun rec games you want, but if you do want to get better, if you want to succeed at competition level play, it's really helpful to get to a point in a game when it's tight and make balls and hit the right shots. Again, seems simple, seems straightforward, yet if you don't do it in practice, you don't do it in rec games, it will not translate to the competition play.
Yeah, it's almost like you're going for less hero balls the more advanced you get, closer to that 5-0 range. You're not trying to hit these highlight reel shots that we all try to hit when we're a 4-2-5 or a 4-5 or whatever. You're not trying to just like lace balls within this tiny little square and then you miss it by 3 inches. You're just trying to hit the ball in so that your team can advance and have a higher percentage of winning that point.
Exactly. But it's so enticing. If I got a no look down the line for that's a winner, it's just so enticing and I love it. Yet it's not going to win me a ton of matches. What's going to win me a ton of matches is being able to make my drops, being able to make my third shot drives and getting a fifth shot drop, being able to dink cross court consistently.
Yeah.
Those are the things that win.
If you're in a group that you play with regularly, I think just starting to introduce this kind of thinking into your whole group can be super helpful. And before we ring off, I'll tell you one anecdotal story about it. We play against a guy, Charles, shout out to Charles. He was playing with one of the super hot paddles, either the Gearbox or the Mod, before they got banned. And if it went to his backhand volley, you weren't getting it. It wasn't coming back. It was just annihilated every single time. So we just started saying, don't hit it to Charles's backhand. Wherever he is on the court, he doesn't get a backhand. He gets a forehand every single time. And we won that game with strategy. We just stayed away from it. And it was the thing, as you've identified a number of times, it was the thing that was hurting us the most. So we just didn't give it to him anymore. And he didn't really even notice it, by the way, which is so funny because we see this all the time. We had to tell him after the third game. And he was like, oh, yeah, I guess I only hit 1 or 2 in the last couple of games. I'm like, yeah, we weren't giving it to you. You just weren't getting it at all.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And it's fascinating to see it play out in real time. There's one particular player here that has a really good backhand, yet their forehand is not nearly as strong. He's a very solid 5-0 level player. But it's interesting because he's 5-0 plus on the backhand side, and he's probably 4-0 to 4-5 on the forehand side. Yet it's incredible how often people play him, and he hits like 1 or 2 forehands a game. And it's not recognized unless I point it out. If we're playing against him, I say, hey, by the way, let's try to hit it more to his forehand. And they're like, wow, it's like
magic.
the Rubik's Cube that has been solved.
Yeah, it's cool. Guys, I hope you at least start opening the conversation with the people that you play with about strategic thinking. And if you just write strategic on your wrist before you start playing the next time you play and have a look at it and just think about it. Every point or every game, what's the thing that's hurting you the most? Or how can you take advantage of your strengths? How can you take advantage of their weaknesses? How can you align yourself for success? There's all these little nuances in the game that can make you a better player without having to sit and drill, just by strategic thinking. Thank you, Mircea.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Folks, you've now just listened to another episode of 4.0 to Pro. Picklehelp.com if you guys have any questions. And we are in the process now of looking for our next venue for our next camp. So if anyone is interested in our camp, feel free to email me at picklehelp.com and just tell me you're interested in the camp and I'll get you on the list. So then when we figure out where and when it's going to be, you'll be one of the first people to know. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to 4.0 to Pro. For more tips, find us on Instagram at 4.0 to Pro. If you have a pickleball question, submit it at picklehelp.com. Now, get out there and dominate. But don't forget to have fun.